Francis to the bingo hall. So we try to become accommodating, make it convenient for people, but also let local owners get a chance to showcase the wonderful properties they have. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, the venue today, and come back here for other events if you're able to do so. Some housekeeping, obviously, here for today to talk about Chicago Clean Energy, the Acadia project. So if you're mistakenly here for some other reason, you're more than welcome to stay. We do want to remain on topic. There are restrooms out the door here to your left at the end of the corridor. Feel free at any time to go and use those. There are some refreshments just across the corridor too. So if you feel the need to have a drink or something like that, please do so. We do have some information that we sent out. We are here to talk about Acadia, but if you didn't grab some information, we have some flyers out front that talk about some of the other things that are happening in the community in the 10th Ward. From job fairs that we're sponsoring to meeting the elected officials and the state reps and state senators. The project occurring in Hydra, 130th and Torrance project. Governor Quinn was just out yesterday to talk about that, and some other events. And especially the public schools start September 6th. It's important that everyone gets back in school. I know parents are ready to get the kids out of the house and back into school. We certainly need them. Funding for our public education is very crucial, and attendance plays a significant role in that. So please make sure kids are in school. If you see them hanging around when they're not supposed to be, talk to them, talk to the parents, call up the schools. We need them to get into school. The format of the presentation tonight is I'm just going to do some opening remarks as I'm doing right now. I know we have several speakers. Obviously, we have a PowerPoint, we have a video, and we have some question cards. Hopefully, all of you have received at least one when you walked in. If you have any questions you have in mind already or comments, please write it down in there. Please certainly include your name, organization, and contact information. Email, if you have one, is probably the best. If you do have cards and you have any questions or comments completed now, you can just raise your hand. We'll have some people collect them. And if you have more questions or need for additional cards during the course of the presentation, please just raise your hand and we'll have some picked up as soon as possible. At this point, are there any questions? Yeah.
My question is, I have a comment.
Well, you know, if you can do me a favor, relevant to the information I just shared, if you can wait, we'll probably have 15 minutes to a half hour, and we'll take all the questions as they come in and try to sort through those to make sure that they're not repetitive, if they're not off point. And I can guarantee you the team here is committed to answering any and all questions. If not tonight, if there's follow-up information that's needed, more investigation that's needed, they'll get that information to you. So the better information you have in your card, the better chance we have of getting the information back.
Project. Again, my name is Don Maley. I'm a vice president with Acadia National Corporation. I'm based in New York. Acadia is a New York Stock Exchange listed company. Our market capitalization is over $6 billion. The senior management of Acadia has been running this company for over 30 years and has a very good track record, not only in providing good returns to its investors and shareholders, but also a very good record as a good corporate citizen, which is something that the company values very strongly, and it's an important part of our overall business development effort, and our efforts here is to make sure that we are a good corporate sponsor and a good community participant in developing this project. Acadia, I've been with Acadia for 11 years now, and for the last 8 years I've been responsible for developing our gasification initiative in the United States. We have 4 projects under development. Acadia has invested to this point over $70 million in the development of those 4 projects. One of the important things we want you to know is that our other 3 locations, which those projects are a little farther ahead than Chicago Clean Energy, our teams have worked very, very hard and have been very successful in building community support for the projects there. This project is not as far along as those projects. We did achieve an important milestone back on July 13th when the governor signed our legislation. But that's really just the first step in a long process for us to turn what was an idea spawned by Dave Hagan and Hoyt Hudson, who I'll introduce in a minute, over 8 years ago, into reality. We have much more review and approval processes of our project with state agencies over the next 2 years. We're going to have similar processes with city agencies, and along the way there's going to be multiple opportunities for public involvement and comment. At the same time, thanks to Alderman Pope, we hope to engage in ongoing conversations like these so that as issues come up in the community, we'll be able to address those and hopefully do everything we can to satisfy those concerns. I'm just going to quickly go through the agenda. Go back one. The agenda for tonight. We're going to go through quickly our project team and history. We're going to review the gasification technology for you, so hopefully you have a better understanding of how this technology works. We're going to talk about the community benefits that we think this transaction will bring to Chicago. Walk through our proposed timeline, talk in greater detail about the opportunity for public involvement, and as the Alderman mentioned, have lots of time for your questions. This is the team we brought here to tonight. Echo Industrial Development is Dave Hagan and Wade Hudson, who will be speaking in a minute. They're the original developers of the project. They're the ones who found the site here on the Calumet River and brought Acadia into. They've been working on this over 8 years. We came in about 5 years ago and joined that effort. We have a team of experts, both national experts and local experts, on issues related directly to things that affect this community, the things that we think that you're most concerned about. These are the experts that we've put together to help us assess those concerns, interact with you to make sure that we fully understand what your concerns are, and put together a plan to address those. So we're very excited to have them here and as part of our team. And we look forward to working with you and everybody else in the community to make this project a success. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Dave Hagan, who will talk about the history of this site and our efforts to develop the project here. Thank you. No, we don't. No, I believe we're going to put this on the website after the hearing, so all this will be available on our website. Yes, on our website. No, there's a Chicago Clean Energy, and that information will be at the end of this presentation.
And we also asked us also to prepare a newsletter to include this material, and that will be available on the website, and it will also, at all of the requests, be available at the local libraries.
I would like to have it now, so I know what I'm going through.
It's not available right now. It's part of the PowerPoint. Afterwards, you get online, look at it. The Chicago Clean Power website's been up and running, so it's not available right now.
A lot of people that have computers.
There's going to be hard copies available in my office, in the libraries as well. We'll leave it with various community organizations. So to answer your question, there is not hard copies available right now, but it will be online. Okay, if we can, again, try to hold questions as much as possible, because you'll find during the course of the presentation, most of your questions will be answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you just hold a question or comment? Thank you.
Thanks, Don. My name's Dave Hagan. I wish I had an agenda so I knew what I was supposed to say. Next slide, I think. Yeah, this is the project site around the 1920s. Here we're looking at about 1945. Let's call it 1950. Around then, I was born over at 95th in California, and about that time I was running up and down Michigan Avenue at 112th because my Uncle Jim and my grandfather owned the Gately's People's Store. I don't know if any of you ever shopped there, but Uncle Jim was Park Commissioner of Chicago for I think 20-some years, and I'm really pleased to be here and actually bringing something to this area that I think will be of phenomenal benefit. So a former Republic Steel site. And what we're looking at now is the site as it's been demolished. If you walk out tonight and get out on 114th Street and turn left, you'll see the smokestack is still there. It's from the old metallurgical coking plant that's been torn down. The site was where big steel was for 100 years. So we get more evidence of just the site being demolished. Okay, so as Don mentioned, been working on this for a while. Goes back to 2001 when met the president of Texaco Gasification over in Troy, Michigan, and we were doing some photovoltaic projects, needed batteries. Texaco was involved in these nickel metal hydride batteries, and Bill said you should be doing gasification. So we spent a lot of time looking at what gasification needed, the land, the water, everything that was required. We came to this site, put a pretty good story together back in 2003. Spent a lot of time talking with the aldermen in the city, and we got to 2005, and Coit didn't have $1 billion, and I didn't have $1 billion, and we certainly didn't have $3 billion. And just for a reference, if you stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon and you could throw away $20 bills every second of every minute of every hour of every day for a year and a half, that's $1 billion. And this is a $3 billion project, so it's a very, very significant investment. The Lucchese came in, we got very active with the legislature and basically saw law enacting this legislation, as Don said, July 13th of this year. The gasification is considered by many to be really a bridge technology, taking it from existing fossil fuels into a world of more renewable, but it is something that is transitional, it is something that is reliable, it's being done every day all over the country. More than 140 gasification plants worldwide, 19 plants here in the country, Lucchese is developing 4. So this is the site, basically almost due north as it sits today, and what we're proposing is a high-tech process for clean energy. It's a sustainable project. We spend $20 million cleaning up a contaminated site, create thousands of jobs, and basically will add $10 billion to the Illinois economy. This is the site as we hope it will be. On the next slide. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Hoyt. He is going to magically make a video show up and then run you through some of the more technical aspects of the project.
Go ahead, cue the video.
Every day we use natural gas in our homes to heat our stoves and furnaces. Year-round, natural gas helps make our homes more comfortable and efficient. A clean, proven technology known as gasification will allow us to use abundant local resources, Illinois coal, and a byproduct of petroleum refining known as petcoke to create natural gas for the first time. Residents across the state will be able to use the natural gas in their homes and businesses. The source materials, also known as feedstock, used to create natural gas will be delivered to the Chicago Clean Energy plant, where it will enter the facility in gasification vessels through a series of covered conveyor belts. Inside the gasification chamber, a chemical reaction converts the coal and petcoke into a substitute natural gas without any combustion or burning of any kind. Unlike older technologies, there will be no traditional smokestacks used in the plant. This chemical process breaks down the coal into the clean hydrocarbons of natural gas and separates and captures other byproducts and chemicals. These byproducts are used in construction materials, agricultural fertilizers, and other industries, where they are in high demand. 85% of the carbon dioxide will be captured. It's then shipped via pipeline from Chicago Clean Energy to facilities outside of the region. The safe and reliable capture of carbon dioxide is used today in domestic oil fields to enhance oil recovery and to limit the emissions of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. The clean substitute natural gas that is produced will then be delivered by area utilities to our homes and businesses. Gasification is such a clean and proven process that the Chicago Clean Energy Plan will be required to operate under more stringent air emissions restrictions than Northwestern Memorial Hospital or the Art Institute of Chicago. Chicago Clean Energy, converting abundant local resources to clean substitute natural gas to heat your home, cook your food, and keep our environment safe.
All right. Next time we'll have 3D glasses and popcorn for everybody. But let's go to the next slide. So there's a few points that are, well, my name is Hoyt Hudson. Myself and Dave Hagan are Echo Industrial, the original developers of this project, and we're here full-time in Chicago working on this all the time. A few points from that video clip that I think we really want to hit home that are really critical to all this. First and foremost, natural gas is a critical fuel for Illinois. It's a clean burning fuel. It's used in a huge number of applications that are used for everyday life. As we saw, furnaces, stoves, industrial uses, a lot of manufacturing. It's even good on a summer night like this for running your barbecue. Another critical point is that Illinois produces none of this natural gas currently. Illinois is a huge user of natural gas. It's hot here in the summer, it's cold in the winter, there's always something we need it for, and yet we don't produce any of it. So what this means is that all the money that is spent by Illinois on natural gas simply goes out of the state. And that's a drain of $4 to $8 billion every year on the Illinois economy. That money goes to other states, it goes to Colorado, it goes to other countries, it goes to Canada, even to some natural gas is imported from places like the Persian Gulf nations. Natural gas is one of the cornerstones of a clean energy economy. Clean energy, the Department of Energy recognizes a lot of forms of clean energy. To produce electricity, things like wind power, solar power, sometimes bioenergy. For natural gas, gasification, and these clean coal families of technologies are a way that natural gas can be produced in an environmentally responsible manner. This natural gas that's produced in this way is indistinguishable from all the other natural gas that's produced using conventional means. This facility that we saw on the video here is going to be represent a really clean energy technology for Chicago that's going to be a showcase for the whole country, and it's going to demonstrate real leadership for Chicago, for Illinois, and for this neighborhood. Slide. Let's go over all the environmental benefits. Dave mentioned our site here, the former home of LTD Coke, and actually a few other metallurgical cokes before that, and Republic Steel, going all the way back to the early 1900s. There's been 100 years of steel making on this site, and in the early days, those kind of companies weren't as careful as they are these days, and so the site is definitely contaminated. Before we even begin construction of this facility, there's going to be a full and complete remediation of this site. This means removing all the dangerous contaminants, anything on the surface or groundwater that needs to go away and be safely disposed of prior to beginning this development. And this in itself will be a benefit to this neighborhood of getting a site which is currently contaminated and unusable for most applications back into a productive use of land. Dave Hagan mentioned the legislation supporting this plant. One of the requirements of the Illinois law that enables this plant is 85% capture and sequestration of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is recognized by the U.S. EPA as a greenhouse gas, a potential contributor to climate change. And in order to mitigate that, any climate change effects, this plant will be required, again, to capture and sequester 85% of the carbon dioxide, which, as we saw in the video, can be used for purposes, industrial purposes, such as enhanced oil recovery, and actually then used to increase the production of domestic oil, which is pretty extraordinary. I mean, it's extraordinary, and I think even worth repeating. We're taking carbon dioxide, which most facilities emit 100% of, and there's very few technologies to even mitigate that. We are capturing 85% of that, and we're using that same carbon dioxide to create domestic oil and to reduce the amount of oil that the United States needs to import from countries like Venezuela or Iran or places like that. This plant will represent a cleaner use of petroleum coke and coal. As we saw in the video, Illinois has abundant coal resources, and this clean coal technology represents a way to use those coal resources in a way that is 99% cleaner than conventional uses. And this in itself is extraordinary, being able to enable those kind of reductions from the use of coal. Petroleum coke is a byproduct of oil refining, which today, actually the disposition creates a lot of greenhouse gas and contaminants, as that petroleum coke is used in power plants and furnaces. Using this gasification technology, we were able to use that petroleum coke and convert it into clean burning natural gas. As we saw in the video, one of the most extraordinary points of this technology is the way that we're able to take the impurities in the feedstock, and rather than sending them up a smokestack, as might happen in a conventional facility, to convert those into marketable byproducts. Just some examples of those: any sulfur that is contained in the fuel is actually turned into just elemental sulfur, which is sold to the fertilizer industry. Other contaminants, such as uncombustible elements of the fuel, which in a conventional plant turn into an ashy substance, with this plant are turned into it's called gasification slag, which is kind of a gravelly, glass-like substance that's useful for road building. So again, just like we're doing with the CO2, this technology allows us to process any impurities and contaminants and actually make marketable byproducts out of those. And as we mentioned before, this is going to really demonstrate a clean energy leadership for this region, for Chicago, for Illinois. It's going to demonstrate a path forward by which any of the other coal-burning facilities in Illinois, in the Midwest, could be ultimately converted to this technology, and also creating that 99% reduction in pollutants, as well as 85% capture of carbon dioxide. The last point there, low impact. The Chicago Clean Energy Project, as Don mentioned, has a skilled team of engineers, consultants who have worked to fully evaluate the project and its technology, and to design the project in a way that reduces any potential significant impacts on the neighborhood, on the community, on the city. Jobs and investment. Dave illustrated what $3 billion looks like, and what it will look like for this community is a massive investment of jobs and economic development. It's really a large project that will create benefits not only from the direct construction and operation of the project, but benefits that spread throughout and propagate throughout the economy. We call these secondary or tertiary jobs. Services that might support the plant, things like food service or hospitality or healthcare services, anything like that. Wherever there's going to be economic activity, it's going to increase jobs and economic growth for the whole neighborhood. Looking at some of the numbers, the construction of this facility is expected to create 1,100 jobs on average over a 3.5-year construction period, with an additional over 600 jobs created in local and related businesses during that time. Once the plant is operational, we're looking at 200 permanent, high-paying jobs, and that's in the region. And that's a critical point. This isn't a type of business that, as we've seen a lot in the headlines today, is in Illinois one year, and then the next year they move it to Indiana or Wisconsin or Texas or whatever. The legislation that Illinois passed is for 30-year contracts with this facility. That means that this plant will be able to operate for 30 years. Its expected lifespan is even longer than that. So we're really talking about long-term generational jobs for this community and for this city. With an additional, we're estimating 450 jobs in local and related businesses as the facility is operating. Crucial to all this is local training programs. As you know, this facility is high tech, it uses a lot of equipment and facilities. But crucial to our strategy is that Chicago Clean Energy wants to source the talent and to train people from this region who want to live here, who want to be a part of this neighborhood, to work at this plant. So working with Alderman Pope and other community leaders, Chicago Clean Energy will be working with local community colleges, technical colleges, and other type of organizations to create these training programs, such that willing people will be able to train for these jobs, become a part of this development. Even before the plant goes online, we will be training people to work in this plant. Kind of reviewing then the benefits to the neighborhood. I mean, as Don mentioned, Chicago Clean Energy sees its role as a partner in this community. We want, on the environmental side, we want to be a good neighbor. On the business side, we want to be a partner and to grow along with the community. This project isn't going to work, and it's not going to be right for everyone if our goals aren't aligned with your goals in the community there. And it's through this partnership that this $3 billion is going to get to work in this community and create a lot of jobs and economic development. Alderman Pope has a vision for a green energy corridor, which green industrial corridor, which goes throughout the 10th Ward here, ushering in the next generation of clean energy technology, such as gasification and other projects which are contemplated. And Chicago Clean Energy is committed to, as I said, a partnership with the community and a community benefits program that includes job training and that includes working with other community groups and organizations and the natural resources in the community to ensure that when this development comes, the community is a better place because of it. I think with this, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Townsend, who's going to talk a little bit about the legislation process there.
Thank you very much, Hoyt. Chris Townsend from the law firm DLA Piper. It's our honor to be the attorneys that assisted with this project, helping it to come from the idea stage now to the legislative stage and take it to the next step. As Don mentioned in the introduction, on July 13th, we achieved an important milestone. Governor Quinn actually came to the neighborhood, went out to the site, and was joined by about 200 people who support the project, people from the community, to be able to sign the legislation. I had the support, obviously, there of Alderman Pope. We had Representative Colvin, Senator Donnie Trotter, all attended the signing ceremony. Each of them played a critical role in the passage of the legislation, which enjoyed widespread supermajority support within both the House of Representatives and the Illinois Senate. Not only did we have supermajorities, but we brought together senators and representatives from the northern part of Illinois, the Chicago area, as well as southern Illinois, recognizing that the benefits of the project not only are to Chicago and your community, but benefit the entire state. We'll talk about some of the ways that it benefits you both in terms of the development here that you've heard about, but also in terms of your natural gas rates. There are benefits there as well. So again, this project is going to produce natural gas, and we all know that natural gas is an extremely volatile in terms of pricing. You know that during the winter your natural gas prices are exceptionally high, during the summer prices are low. The price out of this facility is going to be very steady. For 30 years, you're going to know what the cost of the natural gas is that comes out of this facility, and as a result, when that price is blended into your natural gas price, it's going to be a much more steady price. When natural gas prices are high, you're going to be getting a credit on your natural gas bills as a result of this facility. There's guaranteed savings associated with this project. Again, working with the legislature, we were able to perform a $10 million facility cost report study, trying to assess What are the costs going to be able to build this facility? And what are the benefits going to be to consumers? The results of that study suggested that there would be over $1 billion worth of savings to consumers over the life of the project. The legislation requires that the developer guarantee consumers are going to see at least $100 million worth of savings. You're guaranteed that this project is not going to cost you money, it's going to save you money. So in a consumer perspective, there's a fantastic story as to how it is that this is going to be able to benefit you. 100% of the risk here is in private development for this project in a number of different ways that you are not at all used to with regards to energy projects. The history of Illinois is awful in terms of the cost overruns for building energy projects. And the cost overruns have been passed through by utilities to consumers. This takes the idea of a performance-based rate and changes the concept so that the developer is aligned with the consumer. So that the developer is looking to make sure that there are no cost overruns, that the operations and maintenance that we've been able to study with that $10 million study, understand what those are, that we don't have overruns throughout the term of the project. There's an incentive for the developer to try to sell those additional products that Hoyt was talking about, the sulfur and the slag, and get the most money possible for those, not just because it's going to benefit the developer, but because they split those savings, they split those revenues with the consumers. The developer is going to bear 100% of any risk associated with construction cost overruns. If this costs more than we anticipate, the risk goes to the developer. If it costs more to operate the plant than was anticipated, that risk goes to the developer. And again, in terms of the partnership with consumers, throughout the term of the entire 30-year contract, the developer is aligned with the consumer. If the consumer is saving more money underneath the structure of this legislation, the developer makes more money. You save more, they are able to make more money underneath the project. It really is a true form of performance-based rate making. As a result of those components, we had incredible support for the legislation. Again, led by Alderman Pope, we were able to bring in all sorts of community leaders. We were able to bring in the chambers, the local chambers of commerce here. The faith-based support was fantastic for the legislation and for the project. And we also were able to get the support of the Environmental Law and Policy Center, who looked at this and said, there are a lot of environmental...
They're the original developers.
Expiration date. So it's been a long process, but it's going to continue to be a long process. And as part of that, there's more opportunities, as Chris had mentioned, for public input, public tweaking of the project. Again, not just formal, but informal. Tonight is not a required meeting, but we do all kinds of public meetings. Some groups are represented here today. I see the Industrial Commission, the Environmental Task Force, the Chambers. Those folks were invited to a presentation earlier in the year at Chicago State. So some of the organizations have already heard about this project, have a little better understanding of it. We plan to have more of those. I think it was mentioned that the city will have at least 2 public hearings that are required. So those will be held in the neighborhood, maybe at this location, maybe at another site that's accessible by everyone. And there is a sincere commitment by the development team. I think as you can see by their actions tonight, that if there's any questions, comments, need for additional information, that will occur. So at this point, I'm going to ask people to not raise your hands necessarily, but send in the rest of the questions so we can try to be as effective and efficient as possible. I think the presentation went fairly smooth, about 40 minutes, so we'll try to answer as many of these questions as possible. We're gathering the questions now. So. We're going to read from the cards if we can, please, so there's plenty of them. And again, the website, Chicago Clean Energy, www.chicagocleanenergy.com. We will have this and additional information available at some resource centers, at the libraries, at the schools, at my office. So if you're looking for a hard copy, we've done this in the past, we can have it available at the task force, at Chicago State. The libraries seem to be a great venue for retrieving that information. We will make those available. White's going to answer at least one of the first questions, or some of the questions that have been committed. Right.
Again, thank you for all the questions, and there's still more coming. I guess what I've got in front of me is some of the questions that were repeated. I'm just going to go through a few of them, and then any of those that we didn't touch on, and we have time permitting, we'll go through them individually as well. We had a number of questions related to the storage, the movement, and potential associated dust from the coal and petroleum coke used by this facility. And this is definitely an issue for us that Chicago Clean Energy wants to be on top of and to implement the best practices for. One thing I want to make clear just from the offset is, this diagram here shows well, this is the Chicago Clean Energy facility. Yeah, put it on here so later. Directly to the north of us, you see what's called the DTE Chicago Fuels Terminal. That's an existing facility which currently takes in coal by rail. Actually, the coal comes in all the way from Wyoming and Montana. And that coal is collected here in piles, and then it's loaded on, it's mixed up and blended and put onto barges or moved around at other locations. And also there's currently trucks that bring in petroleum coke from the BP refinery to this site. So this is a separate company from Chicago Clean Energy. In the base design for our plant that was designed here, Chicago Clean Energy would contract with DTE Energy where DTE Energy would collect the fuel and send it on a conveyor belt to Chicago Clean Energy. So it's basically an efficient way to use an existing facility. That being said, DTE Energy is a separate entity from Chicago Clean Energy. They would likely be the supplier of fuel for this facility with this design. So to that extent, in as much as we can influence the practices that DTE Energy uses to implement the best practices for reducing dust from the movement of these fuels and from the processing of these fuels, we would absolutely be committed to do that. But we do not have 100% control over what is done at the facility. At the same time, there are some number of positive developments related to the movement of fuel through this neighborhood. Whereas I mentioned, currently trucks move a lot of petroleum coke from the refinery to these piles here. Sometime in the 2013-2014 time frame, that mode of transport will be done all with rail. So that should take a significant number of trucks off the road that are currently moving petroleum coke and creating some level of dust in the neighborhood. Just for a little more on that, actually I want to introduce Bob Singer. Do we have that microphone? Dr. Robert Singer, is a environmental engineer with the firm of Ecology and Environment. Bob is the one who's led the study that I mentioned, researching a lot of the environmental impacts and ways that Chicago Clean Energy can mitigate those and be a good neighbor. And Bob has spent a lot of time looking at the issue of coal and coal dust and dust from this and how to mitigate dust.
Something I might just add to what Boyd said, the movement of coal, once it gets onto the Chicago Clean Energy site, will be done entirely in covered conveyors. Okay, you can hear. Anybody hear? Can you hear me in the back? Raise your hand. All the movement of the coal on the site would be with covered containers. The conveyors would have covers on, and the storage facility would be sprayed down and dust controlled. So the actual potential for coal dust is drastically reduced. Even the unloading of the railroad cars would be done in the enclosure. The question was, how can you prove that it would be completely free of dust? This is not new technology. These technologies, covered conveyors and covered unloading facilities, have been used elsewhere, and the dust has been measured.
If we, I have a friend that we want to be able to pull all these questions. It's like, well,
You gotta get, you gotta have it.
okay, I'm not going to hear. A lot of people in here, I'm sorry, I can hear.
Give them the mic.
I've been to this meeting before, and I have an knowledge of what have been discussed. One of the main things, beautiful, they speak well, well educated, but I would like to follow item by item, because half of these people in here, they don't know which item they're going to be talking about it. We want to have something in black and white so we can knock it. The community, talk to someone and say, hey, you promised this. You haven't done it yet. Sure, the future is good. I go along with it. But I don't want to be dying for the dust. We have this experience already. And I'm not picking at him. We have a company here, our news, which is out of business right now. It caused a lot of damage. And that's the reason why I'm speaking like the way I am. If I don't speak to them, some of these gentlemen in here, he promised me, he says, hey, we're going to take you for a tour. We're going to show you our plans. I'm still waiting. Promises.
Nobody's going to stand here and say that that 100% of all dust from all coal use is going to be controlled. But there have been studies done with these newer technologies. We're not talking about 1960 or 70 technology. Newer technologies where the coal dust is largely controlled by these technologies. This is a big plant. But the coal is already on the site. It's already coming in and being unloaded. So this will reduce the current situation because it's not going to be coming in by trucks. There's also monitoring that will have to be done. And the state's going to monitor this very carefully and hold the company responsible for performance. That's the best we're going to be able to do. And I don't think we want to have a dialogue on it.
Again, there's a lot of questions. That's why it's important we try to filter through some of these. Put your name on them. We're going to try to get through as many as possible. Some of these questions may not be able to be answered, as I said. That's why your your email address, your phone number, etc. Get that so that they can be answered to the fullest degree possible. So we're going to keep rifling through these questions, please. If you have any, put them down on paper. We don't want to take oral questions right now until we get through the many questions that have already been presented.
Can I have a comment?
No, not at this point. Thank you, though.
I think a second area where there were a number of questions was regarding is gasification a proven technology? Is it available and is it in operations in other locations around the country? Coal gasification has been going on for well over 100 years, but in its current form, it's been in operations now for over 25 years in the United States. An identical gasification plant was built in Kingsport, Tennessee back in 1985 by Eastman Chemical. They've been running that plant for 30 years. It runs well in excess of its design capacity, and its availability factors are 98-99%. They have probably one of the premier facilities in the world. There's 19 other facilities operating in the United States. I think the next generation of plants came on in the mid-90s, and some of those plants did have initial startup problems. The first 2 or 3 years they had some bugs in those plants. They didn't run particularly well, but they were successful in solving those problems, and all those plants are operating very well today. The next generation of this same technology really has been being built in China. China had 12 of these gasification plants come online last year, and they're having 20 more of these gasification plants come online this year. Those plants in 2010, the 15 that came up online, came up and ran in full capacity within 15 days of starting the plants up. So this is a technology that has matured over the last 25 years, great improvements in the overall design that have greatly improved the reliability of these plants, and we're extremely confident that our plants are going to run well. The two gentlemen that we've hired to operate these facilities, and just to go to another point, is that of the 200 people that we're talking about hiring for the plant, we need to train people out. There's not enough people out there. We can't go out and recruit people and say, from Oklahoma or Kansas where there's a plant, and come in and operate this plant. There's just not that many people out there operating these plants today. So these guys, what they did, they built and operated a plant in Coffeyville, Kansas. And they started that plant up in 1989, and they ran that plant for 8 years before they joined our firm. And what they did there is they went out and hired locally, mostly people off farmers, young kids who were looking for an opportunity, and they trained those individuals to operate that plant, and they've all stayed there, and they're operating that plant today. And that's the same thing that we intend to do here in the southeast side of Chicago. Yes.
I have a question for what you just stated. You said that the coal gasification plants are in existence already. Do they generate consumer gas?
I'm sorry, repeat the question. I think the question is, there are plants, gasification plants operating today, are there plants generating substitute natural gas?
Consumer gas. Used by consumers.
Well, there is a gasification plant in North Dakota that produces the same product that we will produce, and that is sold in the marketplace to consumers and industrial customers, yes.
And it saves the consumers money?
We said and industrial customers. And industrial.
No, but does it save the consumers money?
The plant's been in operations for 20 years, and I believe it just sells its gas at market prices. It is not structured the way that we've structured our project. They just sell their gas into the market and get a market price for the gas.
And does it employ part of sequestration?
Yes, it does. They were one of the first, about 10 years ago, they built a 200-mile pipeline and piped that CO2 to Canada for carbon capture and sequestration.
Again, I hate to be the bad guy here, but if we can get questions on paper, that's why you have questions.
Exactly. Let's go back to the
And I know they're related. No, we cannot ask questions right now. Please. There's a lot of people who have asked questions. We're going to get through them. Thank you, Peggy. Please, I know they're related. Please write them down. Keep
I
going.
cannot write down questions because
You cannot write down questions.
They're not answering the question. They're not answering the question.
Write down the question if it's related. We're getting tied up for all night. We got to keep moving.
They will be tied up here all night. It's our community.
That's fine. Thank you. You can write your question down.
No, he's trying to hog the whole meeting so that other questions can't be answered.
All right, we have a few more questions.
Presentation's not over. Let's hear from everybody.
Excuse me, this is the problem, we're not being efficient. If you can, they're not sensitive. There is.
Why do you need to screen them?
All right, I answered this, I spoke of this earlier. We're screening them to make sure there's not repetition. All right, there's questions. We've only got 3 questions because we keep getting interruptions. We're going to read from this, and if you're not interested, please get to the website. You don't have to stay. We're trying to get computers.
We don't have
Please.
Go to the library.
You can come to my office, use my computer, okay? Thank you. You don't have a computer, you're just using one 2 minutes ago, so that's a lie. It's a phone that has access to the internet, so I don't appreciate your dishonesty.
All right, we have a question here.
Go liars, sir.
There was a set of questions regarding the site, the use of this, the former LTV Coke plant as the site for Chicago Clean Energy. There's sort of a broad question. Why here? Why would you want to build this development at this particular location? There's a lot of really compelling reasons why this is a great site for Chicago Clean Energy. For a number of reasons. One, we saw in some of those earlier pictures from 1940 through Public Steel. There's a huge amount of infrastructure in this place, right at this site. There's rail lines that go up and down. There's this, the Calumet River is a navigable river with a very deep draft, so barges or even ocean-going sized vessels can come through here. Chicago is home to a lot of infrastructure for pipelines and distribution of gas. And in addition, there's a large dock face along this site. All of these attributes represent over $100 million that it would cost to build those things from scratch, not to mention efficiency. And it's the savings from reusing this existing infrastructure which will ultimately be passed along to consumers in the cost of this gas. Other reasons why this is a great location. In the video here, we saw the use of petroleum coke as a fuel for this facility. In the Chicagoland area, there's 3 major oil refineries over at Whiting, Indiana, at Joliet, and Lamont, Illinois. All of those refineries produce this petroleum coke product, which currently is shipped hundreds or even thousands of miles down the Mississippi River into different places, which is very inefficient. The location of this site here, close to these sources of petroleum coke, will mean that that product can be safely and cleanly converted into energy without having to be transported large distances. And then the third major attribute of the site is simply jobs. We have in the 10th ward here, we have proximity to a great skilled workforce. And there's infrastructure, there's great workers, and as well as organizations and community groups which are committed to workforce development, as well as our political leaders. We have some specific questions moving on regarding traffic, the movement of trucks or cars on the roadways. To help with those, I'd actually like to bring up Mr. Abuna. Louis Abuna is with KLOA Traffic Consultants. These are some of the city's premier experts in analyzing truck traffic. And so Chicago Clean Energy has engaged Louis' firm to, again, as we did on the environmental side, to help us understand the traffic impacts and also to direct the design of our plan in a way to mitigate those traffic impacts.
Thank you, Lloyd. Again, my name is... Thank you. My name is Louis Abuna. I'm a traffic engineer with KLOA. Like Hoyt said, we've been engaged by them to look at the traffic impact of the proposed facility. We have just been retained recently, so we are in the process of looking at the traffic impact that the facility would have during different stages. As you saw in the presentation, there'll be the initial phase of the cleaning up the site. There'll be the phase of the construction and the phase of the operation of the plant. So we'll be looking at all these impacts as it relates to the truck traffic, as it relates to the employee traffic during construction and during the operation. There are a couple of things that I want to bring out to you at this point. Like I said, we are in the process of preparing those studies. Those studies will be done in accordance with the requirements of the Chicago Department of Transportation, with the Alderman's requirements. So we will have those studies completed and submitted to those agencies. But there are a couple of things that I would like to point out. That currently there is an enormous amount of truck traffic that is currently generated by the site as it relates to the salt trucks that come in and out of the facility. Those obviously will go away when the plant is constructed. The other thing is the trucks that the DTE facility to the north generates, as you heard earlier. Those in the next few years will also go away. With all the petroleum coke that will be coming in by train. So there will be a decrease in the truck traffic from the get-go as a result of those changes in the neighborhood. As it relates to this facility, the truck traffic will vary depending on different operations, whether during the cleanup phase or the construction phase, as well the operational phase. Most of the traffic will be really vehicular traffic by the employees. But in any case, if any truck traffic will be generated at this point, the routing would be towards the Dan Ryan Expressway. So that it looks like at this point we're looking at trucks using Avenue O, going south to 126, then taking Torrance Avenue to 130th, and then onto the Dan Ryan Expressway. The number of trucks, the frequency, and the hours at this point, we're working through those numbers, like I said earlier. But to the greater extent, barges and trains will be used either to transport material out of the site or to the site, and the dependency on the truck traffic will be minimized as much as possible to minimize the impact on the neighborhood. But as we get into this study in more detail, We'll have more data to share with you. We'll have the study available for your review at that time. Thank you.
Excuse me, I have a written question.
Again, we're going to stick to the cards for now. Thank you. I was informed by the team that all questions and answers will be posted on the site as well, along with additional information as it becomes available. As was just said, the traffic engineer was just brought on board. As more information becomes available, it will be online too. This is an ongoing process, so all your questions, even those that have been answered tonight, will be responded and posted on the website.
So just another question.
Some of the written questions we've seen. First one we have here is, are there any state subsidies? How much? The only state subsidy was a $10 million grant for the initial cost study. The state, in approving its legislation, wanted to understand what the facility would cost, and as part of that program, they authorized grants for 3 projects in the state, and we were the fortunate recipient of one of those grants. That information in that cost study formed the basis of the review by the state legislature and the governor's office for our legislation. And we're much appreciative of their willingness to support those studies so that they could really evaluate this opportunity. And fortunately, they came to the conclusion that this is a good opportunity for the state and the community. But that's the only subsidy that the project has received. We're not planning to apply for any others, not aware of any others being available for the project. Who will buy the byproducts? The byproducts are all commodities that are sold in the marketplace today. We've talked about the sulfur. That is a byproduct that will be used in making a fertilizer. We're talking to a number of companies who have an interest in taking that sulfur from the site. Probably the biggest commodity that we have is our CO2. We're going to be able to sell that CO2 for a profit because it's going to be used for enhanced oil recovery, and we'll be building a pipeline from the project site down to the Gulf Coast where the oil properties are that can be used, where this is currently being used to generate additional oil production. And so we actually, for our 3 other projects, have executed contracts with a company called Denbury Resources, who's one of the leaders in using CO2 in enhanced oil recovery. And we're in discussions with them for them contracting for the CO2 for this project. They are going to be building a 450-mile pipeline from their facilities in Jackson, Mississippi, up to Rockport, Indiana, where our other project is located, and then another 280 miles from Rockport up to Chicago to take that. And there are existing right-of-ways because there's multiple product lines that have been in place for 50, 80, 100 years between the Gulf Coast and in the Midwest. So we'll be using existing right-of-ways to put that pipeline in place. The slag that the project will produce probably will be sold to the cement industry. It's a very good additive to the cement process. Our project in Indiana is in active discussions with a cement plant in Louisville, Kentucky, which is about 45 minutes away, and they want to take all the slag from the plant for their process here. And there's multiple cement plants here in the Chicago area that can take that product, so we don't see any problem in selling that. We'll also be producing a large amount of argon, which is a industrial gas that's used in steel making and welding and a lot of different industrial applications. It's a high value product, and we'll be putting that into rail cars, and that will be sold to one of the large industrial gas companies that use that product and sell it to industrial customers. We'll also be producing about 10% of our product won't be sold under contract to the utilities of our substitute natural gas. That will be put into the pipeline and sold into the market. And those revenues that we collect, like all our revenues from these other products I'm talking about, 50% of those revenues go for the account of the owner, and 50% of those revenues go as a reduction in the price of our gas to the consumer. Differences between the vetoed bill and the final bill. I'll touch on that. Maybe Hoyt, you can expand on it. Or Chris, you want to talk about that? Yeah, sure.
Excuse me, I have one question.
As you're probably aware,
Can you write it down?
Can you write it down? We'll run through follow-up.
We're asking you, you're missing our community.
Go ahead.
Write down your questions, please. I don't know how many times they're all related. Please, we can keep going through these, and you can answer the question at the end again. No, we've been through this many times.
So you're not allowing me to ask the question?
I'm asking you to write it down like we are. Thank you.
Just like everybody else. And again, we appreciate the input, and we appreciate the fact that this is going to be an ongoing process, and we are going to have other opportunities to interact with them. The question that we're looking to...
No, do not.
The question
You are interrupting.
The question that was asked that I'm trying to answer, the question that was asked that I'm trying to answer was a question that related to the difference between a vetoed piece of legislation and the piece of legislation that was actually passed and signed into law by the government.
Sign in your neighborhood. How about that? Put it in your neighborhood, in the back of your neighborhood. Have your kids go to school. Out the street. Power plant kids. Have your kids go to the school.
Please be respectful of the process.
You know that the amount of carbon dioxide is going to be twice. That's the truth. The amount of carbon
All right, if we don't want to conduct an informational meeting, we will leave.
Is there an increase in carbon dioxide or not?
That is incorrect of what you're
All right,
saying.
if you continue to do this, it's not
That is
beneficial to
No,
anyone.
that's right.
So
It's not
please sit
beneficial to the
down.
community. I would say everybody get in touch with the Southeast Environmental Task Force to get educated, because people is power. People is power to get behind the department, not to have their way. For this department, not to have their way. Southeast Environmental Task Force. I'm talking about people that are more.
We want it here. We want it here.
Not me, I live here and I don't want it here.
I live here and I want it.
I don't want it.
All right, folks, if you want
Southeast
information,
Environmental
listen.
Task
If you want to
Force.
interrupt, please leave.
I appreciate whoever asked the question about the differences between the legislation, and I'd like to try to answer that question. The legislation, as you've heard about, we've been working on the project for quite some time, and we were successful in getting a supermajority of the House of Representatives and the Senate to pass a piece of legislation at the beginning of the year. At any point, your rates won't be impacted negatively by more than a percentage that's based off of the same type of 2% percentage that's in the renewable portfolio standard. That type of protection then is built into the legislation, not only as a mandate, but there's also developer support for that. The developer is going to put into essentially an escrow $150 million before we begin construction to be able to provide that type of rate protection for you. And again, the idea of rate protection, usually you think, oh no, my bills are going to be high, I need to have rate protection. Again, the beauty of this facility is that when your rates are high, because we have this steady price, our price is going to be low. You're going to be getting a credit as a result of this facility. The rate protection that's built into the legislation actually is to be able to protect you when the prices are low. So when prices are unexpectedly low, we even have a mechanism to be able to protect you in that situation, to be able to draw on those funds that are in the escrow. Not only $150 million that are put in there to begin with, but over the life of the project, there's over $2 billion that are expected to be put in there through these ancillary sales. So through the sales of the slag, of the argon, all of the sales are split between the developer and this process of the Consumer Protection Reserve account to be able to make sure that there's money there to to be able to help mitigate the impact on rates. So there was an adjustment made to that level. The size of the Consumer Protection Reserve account over the life of the project is something that was addressed in the revised legislation. And there were also a number of different tweaks that were included to address all sorts of concerns that we heard from different entities, including some of the utilities who didn't like some of the language about how the allocation of the gas was going to go amongst the utilities. We included language there. From the environmental communities, they said that they wanted to have some of the processes for our permits assured before we go to construction, so we included some language addressing that. So we presented back to the governor the revised legislation, and he was very pleased with that. We again received, I think, 75 votes from the House of Representatives, 39 votes in the Senate, supermajorities in both cases, in, again, reaffirming their support for the project. Another question with regards to the legal concepts that are in the legislation. Will the utilities be required to purchase the plant's output? And is that at a premium? So again, the legislation describes a process for us to be interacting with the utilities. The utilities are given a choice at the outset. Either they can work with us and develop a contract for the output of the facility, or they can have a biennial review of their rates, go before the Illinois Commerce Commission every other year and have the commission review their rates. That's a decision that they're going to have to be making by the middle of next month as to which process they're going to go down. We anticipate that we'll have 4 different utilities that are purchasing the output of the facility. It will be Peoples Gas, who serves this neighborhood, North Shore Gas serves up the northern suburbs, Nicor in the western suburbs, and Ameren, the downstate utility. All will enter into essentially identical contracts, I believe, with the facility for the output of the facility. The question with regards to the price, again, the price that we have is set by a formula. The formula is designed to be able to have a fairly steady price throughout the entire term. That's the price that the utilities will be paying for the natural gas. Will be set by this formula rather than being set by the market price of natural gas. Again, some of the other facilities throughout the country, it still doesn't provide that same type of protection to consumers. This is designed to provide protection to consumers by having a steady price throughout this term. Thank you for those questions.
The question relates to safety precautions as described. So the question was related to safety precautions, describing safety precautions. I'll just talk loud. Let me just do that. Safety precautions, there's really 2 categories.
Why doesn't the individual ask themselves the question?
Can we get through this? Can we get through some of these questions?
No, that's not acceptable. No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Whatever you're asking, whatever you keep with your hand, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. Who is asking that question? Why doesn't that person ask the question? Who are you? Who are you?
Can we listen to what's going on here?
There's 2 types of safety precautions.
No, exactly. Why would I be happy? Trying to brainwash people. Why would I be happy? Exactly right.
There's 2
I'm
types
glad
of
I'm not
safety
happy. And
precautions.
the reason why I'm here, like you had said before the children. That's right. Take me out. The reason why I'm here is for the guests. The reason why I'm here is for the children.
Okay, why you're here, we're all here to listen.
Don't kick me out so that there's something to talk about. Kick me out so that there's something to talk about.
There are 2 types of safety precautions that have to be considered. One is worker safety at the plant, and the other is community safety concerns.
There's nothing to explain. You have your child go to the school that needs to be in the community where this power plant.
I'm assuming that you're interested primarily in the community safety.
Asking for somebody else on your
She's only got her own agenda, let her go.
That's right. Take me out so that I can tell them that you have something to talk about. Go ahead.
The community safety precautions are something that have to be considered very carefully in the plant design. We look at every component of the plant. There are components of this. It's natural gas, as you all know. It's flammable. There's a lot of it. It's explosive. So there is a potential for a catastrophic failure. The worst case scenario, there's an earthquake or a plane crashes into it, or a terrorist concern, and there could be a fire or there could be an explosion. We've done some modeling. Something like that would certainly be a disaster, but the fire would not extend beyond the plant property, and emergency responders will be getting special training on how to deal with failures and problems and fires and so forth. Some other safety concerns that we've thought a lot about is the use of chemicals on the plant, and as a number of speakers have already said, this is not a new technology. There's no new chemicals or particularly hazardous substances used. There's a small amount of ammonia that's used, but it's a big site, it's a big facility, and if there were a failure in one of these tanks, it would disperse before it would become a hazard to the community. But the thing we probably are most concerned about, dealing with natural gas, and there's natural gas pipelines running right outside the street here, is fires. And other than designing carefully, training first responders, and keeping the large amounts of gas that are in the vessels away from the community. And we should have, there's no gas storage on the site. The gas is produced, it goes into a pipeline, it gets distributed to the consumers, just like it does now. The only difference is the source is local as opposed to coming from hundreds of miles away. There's a small ammonia tank. And then number 5 is, what are the plans for a health impact assessment? The health impact assessments are done, I'm not supposed to answer a question from the floor. The health impact assessments are done by the state when they permit plants. There are standards for emissions of particulates and other substances that could impact health. And by keeping the emissions to within the standards and actually well below the standards for dust, for particulates, and so forth, it will prevent any health impacts. The health impact assessments are done by the state. It's beyond the scope of this project. The question is, will the plant use 10 million gallons of water per day? Well, that's a big switch. Okay, we're going to water. The plant will use 10 million gallons per day. It will return 2, so there's a net consumption of 8 million gallons per day out of the Calumet River. It sounds like a lot of water. To try to put that in perspective, because we have thought about this, it's about 600 garden hoses running at once, continuously. I don't know if that helps you to visualize how much water that is. So, but take that 8 million gallons of consumptive use and compare it to the 1.4 billion gallons per day that's used in Illinois, and it's less than half of 1%. It's also already permitted on the site from the prior uses on the site, so it doesn't increase the net withdrawal from Lake Michigan at all, because the existing permit's already considered.
A few more of the questions. There's a question on what happens to the 15% of the CO2 that is not captured. I think the first part of that, the answer to that question is that the plant is designed to capture 90% of the CO2. So on a year-in, year-out basis, our expectation will be that we're actually capturing 90% of the CO2. The plant is guaranteeing that it will capture 85%. Okay? It's designed to capture 90%. So, because there are conditions that could cause us not to capture it all the time 90%. But on an average year, we would expect to capture 90%. The plant is designed to be able to capture 90%. Probably could even, in a good year, you might be capturing 91, 92%, but on average it should do 90%. There will be the odd year where we do 87%, we might do 85% because of what we would call force majeure events, things beyond our control that we can't can't control. We're incentivized to capture 100% if we can. The current technology, we can design the plant to capture 90% because we're getting paid for every ton of CO2 that we capture and put in the pipe. That's profits for us. We make money selling our CO2. So we have all the incentive in the world to capture the 90%, and down the road, if there's new technology, new ways that we can invest in the plant to capture more, we'll be incentivized to do that because we'll be able to make money selling that CO2. Right. So yes. So in the air, 15% of it. There's places in the plant where small amounts of CO2 will escape, and the cost of capturing that CO2 with current technology is prohibitive. And so that will be part, that whole...
That's not accurate. There's more species.
So, okay, I'm sorry. I'm big. I'll give a further explanation, one other thing, because there's another question here. What is the current status of permits? And I can talk a little bit more about CO2 when we do that. We have not done anything in terms of filing for permits, a permit application. That process will commence shortly. We have permitted our plant in Lake Charles, Louisiana. That permit was obtained over 2 years ago. That process went very smoothly, and the emission levels at that plant are extraordinarily low. We recently filed last spring our permit application for the Indiana project, and so we filed about 2 years later. The emission standards are even more stringent than what were the rules 2 years ago, and we're in the process now. But so far, we filed our application, and we meet all the new stricter emission standards. And that project will also have to meet a greenhouse gas emission criteria for the first time. We'll be one of the first plants in the country to be subject to those rules, and this plant will be subject to those rules. They're just currently being implemented by the EPA. And as part of that process in Indiana, we've had to do what's called a BACT analysis of our CO2 emissions at the plant, best available control technology. So we've had to put into our application what we're doing to capture our CO2, and we have to prove to the Environmental Protection Agency that we're employing the best available technologies today and doing everything we possibly can to maximize that capture of CO2. And that's where that 90% design is in that application. We've designed it. There is a margin in that application because there are events beyond our control where we may, on a given day or week, we may not be able to hit that 90%, but it is designed to that. And we have to demonstrate to the Environmental Protection Agency, to their satisfaction, that we are using the best available technology today to control those greenhouse gas emissions. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to read the question, answer the questions.
You have to be
So the one left on this list is, can Olive Harvey College participate in the job training? And absolutely, we're going to reach out to all the local education communities and work with them to help us develop a great staff to operate these facilities. Are there other written?
Alderman, do you have any more written ones? If you have any written questions, please, we need your name, contact information again, so that it can be posted on the website and so that we can get more specific information.
Just answer the question.
All right, can you please leave now? You've been a total disruption.
Yes,
Thank you.
please. You don't want to sit down. I don't leave. Liar. I hope that.
Can you please write down the question? Okay. All right. Can you please keep it back down there? Thank you. All right. All right. First of all, I want to reiterate, any and all questions, we would like them on written pages so that we can respond with your name and address. If there's follow-up, please get on the website. It's about 8 o'clock. We'll take 3 questions and be gone. So there's 1, 2 people. Oh, there's more questions still.
One more I have. I think of the written ones I have in front of me. This is the only one I know that we haven't done yet. What is the environmental record at the other facilities? I assume we're referring to the other gasification facilities in the United States. And the environmental record is really a record which proves out this technology. To some of Dr. Singer's points, those facilities have operated for, in some cases, 20 or 30 years without any major incidents of any sort related to any kind of hazardous situation. As Don mentioned, the facility in North Dakota has been actually successfully demonstrating carbon capture and sequestration and enhanced oil recovery. And all of these facilities that are operating are showing the use of this technology to produce electricity or natural gas or chemicals with a 99% reduction in emissions over conventional uses of these fuels. And I guess Alderman, you're going to get us take 1 or 2 from the crowd.
There's a follow-up related question that Carly needed more explanation. Maggie?
I have 6 questions I wrote down.
Okay, then.
And they have not been addressed.
Okay, we'll get you to them as soon as possible. There may be more additional information required. They'll be on Peggy Salazar is the name. We'll get them on the website. Ask them as much as we'll answer the best as possible.
Actually, at this point, I'd like to do that. Because I don't want to.
All right, that's certainly your option. We have the cards that in the back.
Yeah, my name is Ed Sabowski. I'm with the Steelworkers Union. I've been here for 47 years.
Can we get you a microphone? Hang on.
Not that I've lived in this community for 74 years.
And I think the 2 questions that should be asked have not been asked, and for that matter, you couldn't have answered because they had not been asked. But the fact of the matter remains there that I personally think that what's on the minds of most people assembled here, and you've related to that in a roundabout way through labor, jobs. You've got other facilities. What are the rates of pay in those jobs? What types of job are they paid? What are they used for? And also questions dealing with the environment itself within the community. Now, we can argue all day, but most of the people in this room that have been here for any length of time have gotten knocked in the head over and over and over again by primarily the steel industry. And they lied and they cheated and they dogged us and they did all the things that you shouldn't do to people. And I am not going to accuse you of that, because I don't know you yet. But I know you're the boss, and that gives me kind of a leg up in the opposite direction. But you got to be patient with people when they're asking these questions, because there's a lot of emotional rhetoric that comes out, justifiably so. But let me ask you then directly, and I'll shut up. What do you pay in these other plants? Because you've tried to use that as a trade-off in order to get the interest of people here. I'm sure there are people that came here just looking for a job. And just what you intend to pay once this plant is built. And will you oppose unionization of the workers in this plant? Those are 3 elementary questions that you have control over and you can answer now.
Yes. I heard 2 of them, so I'll answer the 2 and then you can tell me which one I missed. The pay raise for the jobs and the pay salary for the employees at the plant will be in the $75,000 to $85,000 range. So these are skilled jobs. There will be very serious training for the people to do these jobs, and these will be full-time employees, so they will have a full package of benefits associated with that salary, and I think we estimate that benefit package to be in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. So the average employee at this facility will be making approximately $100,000 to $110,000 a year. The farm you're talking about Kansas. The plan. My understanding, I will check. I don't have the exact answer. My understanding is that that's the kinds of salaries that those individuals are making. Okay. I think we have. Peggy, these are your questions. Can we? Clean burning, does that mean no carbon dioxide? I think the answer to that is it does not mean no carbon dioxide. The design of the plant will be about 10% emissions of carbon dioxide. That's the same as natural gas.
But it's not some carbon dioxide in the reaction.
It's not an exact correlation, but I would say a CO2 carbon in to carbon out through all its uses is about a 60% capture. 6% of the carbon that's in the fuel that comes in the plant is ultimately captured and sequestered. Purchase of Leucadia gas means money stays in Illinois. There's a couple components to that. The first one would be we have three components. Recovering our capital investment. That's one piece of our price. The second is our O&M costs, and third is our fuel. The fuel is about 35%. That will be staying in the state of Illinois. The O&M cost is about 20%. That will be spent in the community, so that will stay in Illinois. The capital recovery will be paying back the principal and interest on our debt, and that will probably be borrowed from banks. So we'll be paying, whether that money stays in depends where the bank is located. And then there's within that capital recovery is also our profit component, which will go back to Leucadia. So over 50% of the money spent on buying our gas will stay in the state.
Well, that's not quite the same as the gentleman who said that the difference between purchasing natural gas elsewhere and purchasing it here is that gas elsewhere money goes elsewhere. And yet the difference is that part of our money will go elsewhere also. Outside of the
Part of it will also go outside of the 85% of generated carbon dioxide, or 85% of potential carbon dioxide. Okay.
What about mercury?
Mercury, the pet coke, which is about 50% of the input, does not contain mercury. So 50% of our feedstock would not contain any mercury. The coal does have mercury in it, but Illinois basin coal has, which we'll be using, has much less mercury in it than Powder River Basin coal. And you may know that Powder River Basin coal has replaced Illinois basin coal. I'm going to get to the answer in a second. But of the mercury that's in our feedstock stream, I forget if it's 97% or 98%, but over 97% for sure of that mercury is captured through our process. We run our gas through catalytic converters, and through the catalyst reacts with the mercury, and the mercury drops out of the process. So I believe it's close to over 98%.
97% is good, but you're talking about huge quantities.
Thank you. 97% of what? Thank you.
The amount of mercury that would be emitted to this plant is a small fraction of the EPA regulations on mercury that will go into effect in 2015.
The problem is we have other mercury plants here, right? We're used to mercury. We have 3 other mercury plants in this area. So 3% times what?
Yeah, just to put some of the numbers in perspective, a typical coal power plant of which there's operating plants in the city is producing on the order of over 200 pounds per year of mercury in emissions. And those are the kind of plants which are operating today, which are a big problem and are creating mercury contamination in the Great Lakes and such. And it's those kind of plants which are actively being targeted, which will hopefully be shutting down over the next few years. The Crawford and Fisk facilities, the State Line plants down the street. Those are some major sources which offline will reduce by hundreds of pounds per year the mercury, hopefully. The emissions of this plant are on the order of 1 or 2 pounds per year. So it's a massive, over 99% reduction over conventional means, and as Don mentioned, falling even the level of insignificance with regards to the Illinois EPA.
Peggy, we answered your question on high-paying jobs in Union. So, and then I think your last question is there no hazardous waste to be disposed of?
No. One of my questions before that is carbon generated in the production of clean natural gas?
Sorry,
how much carbon dioxide is produced by the transportation of natural gas currently to us versus the transportation of coal and chemicals in order to generate more gas?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. Whether we are, well, in fact, I can answer your question. With regards to petroleum coke, which is 50% of the input, petroleum coke is going to be loaded onto rail cars, sent to the DTE site, put on barges, shipped down to the Gulf Coast, put on ocean-going ships, and sent overseas if we don't build this plant. So for the farther petcoke, the amount of reductions in it's right here in petcoke.
No, I'm asking for a comparison between how we currently get our natural gas. How much carbon dioxide is generated by the transportation of natural gas to
I don't have the answer to that. I can.
What is the
EPA is analyzing the carbon emissions from shale gas and suggesting that the carbon emissions from the production of shale gas exceed by a huge amount the carbon emissions from coal-fired power plants. So, is there a lot of conflict? Is there an answer to that question? I don't know that there's a definitive answer to that question.
My concern would be that we're going to create more carbon dioxide with this process than currently the way we get our gas now.
Well, the country, by taking the petroleum coke and processing it through our plant, will have a huge reduction in carbon emissions. And that petroleum coke is going to be produced as long as refineries are operating in this country. So on at least half of our product, there's a huge reduction in carbon emissions, huge reductions in criteria pollutants by putting that petroleum coke into this process. So I strongly suspect that when we do the entire analysis that you want us to do, you're going to find that this plant is a net reduction in CO2 emissions and a net reduction in criteria pollutants from what is in existence today. Okay, it was already there and is going to continue to be there. And what does it do? It's sent and it's burned in third world countries with no pollution control equipment whatsoever. So not only is all the CO2 going up in the air, but all the pollutants that are in the petcoke are going out without any pollution controls on it, not even the existing pollution control requirements of the United States. That's why is petcoke shipped overseas, because it can be burned without and avoid all the EPA requirements here. We can do that cleanly and have a huge reduction in CO2 and criteria pollutants on 50% of our feedstock.
Well, what if we already have a reduction just by using natural gas and transport and everything does versus this whole new process? And does that mean that petcoke will never be burned anywhere else again, any other place?
Well, our overall plant gets to within 90% of what natural gas does.
I'm asking if petcoke will not be shipped anywhere else ever to the amount of petcoke that is used by your processing, or will it also still be shipped elsewhere?
All four of our plants, our two plants in the Gulf Coast where petcoke is prevalent, 100% of those plants are using petcoke. So all of that's 9,000 tons a day of petcoke is going to be taken out of the stream that goes overseas and is burned in the air. In our Indiana project and our Chicago project, 50% of our feedstock is going to be from petroleum coke. So is the plan that Lucchese is putting in place going to have a dramatic impact on reduction emissions of carbon and criteria pollutants from petroleum coke? I think we're going to have a tremendous impact.
What is the route of the proposed rail line, please?
All right, it's almost 8 o'clock, so we're going to have a few more questions. The team has agreed to stay around and answer more questions afterwards. And again, I want to emphasize, get your information on the cards, the website. That way, not just you and those present here today, everyone can share the information so it can be constantly updated and any and all can get online. So a few more questions.
Can I just, Peggy had one more question that's on her list. I want to make sure we get to those. Is there hazardous waste to be disposed of from this plant? There is no hazardous waste produced by this plant to be disposed of. In a typical coal plant, you have ash. And ash is not a hazardous waste, but it has to be disposed of and can create some serious problems. The bottom of our barrel is slag. It comes off of our process and is dropped into water and immediately solidifies into a glass-like substance. So any of the hazardous substances that are contained in the coal and petroleum coke are chemically bonded into that product and have been deemed to be non-hazardous materials, non-leachable materials by the EPA. And the existing gasification plants in the United States sell that product into the marketplace, and that's a proven process and proven technology. So we have no hazardous materials produced by the plant.
Every single byproduct will have a market?
Every single byproduct will have a market. I'll give just one caveat. The slag will have to meet certain criteria to be sold. If you want to go to a cement kiln, it's got to meet certain specs. It's the experience of the other plants is it's taken them a year or 2 or 3 to get the slag to meet the specs, and so some of those plants for the first year or 2 have had to send the slag to a landfill, but once you work the process, you can get it to where it conforms to the specs and can be sold. The carbon, 85, everything that we capture will be sold and will be taken to the Gulf Coast, produced for enhanced oil recovery, and then permanently sequestered in the oil field.
There's a question here. I thought I heard some gentleman on equipment I heard yelling out there.
What is the route of the proposed rail line?
Yeah, the rail line, that's here.
Well, it's right there. It's existing rail line going into the DT.
Going south or north? Is it only going south?
The site is serviced by the Indiana Harbor Belt Railway from the south and by Norfolk Southern from the north. Which of those rail companies is used is going to depend on the material or the particular contracts. A given source of coal or petroleum coke could come from either direction. The most likely source would be through the Harbor Belt Railway on the south.
So it may be coming through those neighborhoods up in South Chicago to go to the harbor.
Through the existing railroads, yes.
Through the existing system.
All right, two more questions, gentlemen, and then this over there.
I'll go first. Can you tell me a little bit about the percentage of the projected profits you're willing to funnel back into the community, albeit through the school programs, through other organizations, and how often do you plan on revisiting those projections or percentages you're going to allocate?
I think maybe you missed the community benefits summary, still in its kind of infancy stages.
Yes,
There's some other ones there. Yeah, that's a quick summary, but I understand your question.
Earlier you had made a comment about...
Hey, let's make sure we answer that. So those are some of the questions. We're going to be nailing down the specific CBA. These are general guidelines. There's been other projects that have resulted in similar community benefits agreements that we want to mimic. Just across the border there.
Plan. My understanding, I will check. I don't have the exact answer. My understanding is that that's the kinds of salaries that those individuals are making out of planning in Kansas. That's my understanding, and we'll check and confirm that with our team.
And if they're not, could you come back and inform us what they are?
Sure. We'll post on the website, and we can get back to you in our next meeting.
I want to just a point of information for everyone so you understand why we're collecting names. You respond directly to everyone who submitted a question, both via the mail, if that's the best way to get to you, and then online. So any question anyone wrote with their name on there will be put up on the website and answered on the website so that it's fully available for anyone to see. The intent was to get your information so we can maintain a level of communication with you, so you'll be receiving updates from the project team on where we stand. So that was the purpose of collecting your information. We did group the questions in like-minded areas, and we are going through the individual ones that didn't fall into questions like how many jobs. We presented some of those overall answers. So continue to answer any topic area that you had. And again, if we ask you to fill out the card so we can maintain communication with us beyond tonight.
But you select the cards in which you read.
But only in the sense that there are some very similar questions that you don't answer with one response. So that is one purpose.
I think your second question was related to union jobs. We have signed a project labor agreement with the Chicago Board of Trades, committing to the use of union labor for construction, and we intend to use union labor for the long-term operations of the plant. I'm sorry. I think you said you had three questions, and I forgot what the third one was. Okay. I think we have.
They exceed those green benefits, and looking at the local routes to spread out those benefits, financial or otherwise, to ensure that everyone's participating. It would be the schools, the gardening groups, the community organizations, and that's something that's continuing to be developed.
One thing that has been stated numerous times is your CO2 emissions are better than Northwestern, the Art Museum, but the biggest problem we have out here is EMS response. We have 3 engines, 1 truck, 1 ambulance. When the bridges are up or the train's going by, you're out of luck, except for the Skyway. We get a lot of ship trays and so forth with our one, that's on 118th, and there's been issues with that. When you get a trauma, you have to go to Northwestern, because Christ is always on bypass. Northwestern on bypass, you go to the county or Sinai. Are you going to have your own EMS response like they have at BP and at other facilities, where you don't have to use any of the city's resources? And that was asked 3 times at 3 other meetings by Mr. Hoyt and Mr. Hayden.
short answer is, I think we haven't looked at that in any detail, so I think
our hazmat crew that used to be at the University of Chicago is now at O'Hare International Airport, which is 512, 511, which is the one that's in Lincoln Park. So if you call 911 for a hazmat, you're going to be waiting 45 minutes to 1 hour.
Well, the 114th strike site in Roseland, they're training hazmat, and that firm, that company, I know we're trying to we're getting off subject there, but the O'Hare relocation of those groups, so people are aware, they'll be coming back once their new facility is built on the south side. So that should be done, I believe, next year as far as hazmat is. So there is a presence currently in the area, right in Roseland, Pullman, the hazmat crew, and the more permanent south side hazmat team will be coming into a new facility on the south side, so we have both the north side and south side hazmat. So we do want to wrap it up now. It's been 2 hours. I want to thank you for your patience and your respect. The crew, the team has decided to stick around and answer more questions. I want to thank them too for trying to make this as simplistic and understandable as possible. You can see there's been a lot of questions that have some detailed and complicated technical answers. They've tried to provide those in simplistic terms so all of us, especially myself, can understand it. So I want to thank them. And sure, if there's any unanswered questions or additional comments, get on the website, probably in the fall. And I mentioned this earlier, the next process will begin in terms of permitting in the city. So there'll be more public hearings and input. Make sure you keep in contact with my office or the website so that your partner makes sure you understand exactly what's happening there. So if there's any more questions, thank you. Please feel free to stick around and participate.